And welcome in, Fright Clubbers. Thank you for staying frightful, our friends. This is the Fright Club podcast. That's your cue.
Isn't there supposed to be music?
Oh, you want a song?
Yeah.
I got a song. What's our topic today?
True crime horror.
I'm sorry. What kind of crime?
True crime.
True crime!
No! Stop it!
It's that evil laugh.
Stop it.
I'm laughing because this is a little bit of an inside joke. That's Hope's most hated
I really hate that song. And if that's in my head the rest of the day, you're a dead man.
like the nightmare where we figured out that we can't go to sleep tonight because we're afraid of having a nightmare. Well, this song is Hope's nightmare. But it fit so beautifully, and you wanted a song, so you got it.
You're an evil man.
This is the Fright Club podcast.
I'm Hope Madden.
And I'm George Wolf from MadWolf.com, and we got to have that Spandau Ballet rocking. Is it Spandau or Spando?
I don't care.
We have to settle these serious issues before we get to the true crime. But no, it's going to be good. It's our top 5 true crime horror films. We have a good reason for getting into that topic this week, and we'll get to that. But first, we want to say thank you once again to our senior Brit correspondent from last week and from ScreenRelish.com, our buddy Craig Hunter.
That's right. Joined us last week via Skype, all the way from England, so that we could count down the best in British horror. And it was really super fun to have him. How awesome is that accent?
It was a lot of fun.
It was a really cool accent.
And as we found out, he's actually in Newcastle.
That's right.
Right? Mm-hmm. So our senior Newcastle correspondent, get us up to date on all things British horror. And that was a good conversation. I mean, it was movies, a few of them were movies that we talked about before, but I always like to get that different perspective from somebody who's actually there in the area where we're talking about.
It was interesting because some of the times you don't know if a movie is popular sort of in its, birth nation, and so it was kind of fun to hear him talk about. But also, Ben Wheatley, one of the directors that we talked about, he just has a lot of background on Ben Wheatley. He's from the same hometown, and and so we got to talk about like a whole bunch of Ben Wheatley movies, which is really fun.
That was cool. It was a little bit of a Craig Hunter brushes with greatness.
That's right.
There. But
thanks to Craig Hunter from ScreenRelish.com for joining us. That was awesome.
And we got some great feedback as always. Thank you for that. And most of it, I don't think we had too many quibbles. With our choices.
No, Craig himself had he waffled with the 1 and 2 choices, as did we, honestly. It was a very close call, what got number 1, what got number 2. And he had some people he probably would have put him in the reverse order. We had number 2, The Descent. We had number 1, 28 Days Later.
Right. And
I feel like I lobbied hard enough during the conversation to convince him that I had made the right call because I made the final vote, but we had some Twitter people who disagreed.
One person would say lobby, another person would say strong-arm tactics. Let's not quibble over semantics. But no.
I'm the queen.
He definitely got some votes for The Descent. And it's hard to argue. They're both such great movies.
They really are. They really are. They're 2 of my very favorites.
Yeah. You're splitting hairs at that point. And it was also interesting to hear his perspective on the alternate endings of The Descent.
Yeah.
So he was pointing fingers at us over here, the ending that we got.
Yeah, I think he because the British ending was the original ending.
Right.
And they kind of wussed it up for Americans. And we wish the Americans thanked them.
Kind of wussed it up. So, yeah, that was a lot of fun. Thank you. Be sure to check out ScreenRelish.com, not just for our movie reviews, hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, but it's a great, as we said last week, a great all-around website. And Craig, thank you for that. So, on to this week. It's the true crime horror, and we're tying this in because it fits with the next round of Fright Club Live.
That's right. So join us Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. for a happy hour, 8 o'clock to watch Compliance.
Yeah, and it's at the Gateway Film Center right there on the Ohio State University campus on High Street. If you're anywhere in and around Central Ohio, please join us. If not, join us in spirit because these are shaping up to be really fun events. We had such a great turnout. Really blew us away.
Yeah, last time.
For the last time.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of prizes to give away, so it's another good reason to come.
I think the bartenders were happy.
I think they were.
A lot of beer was poured, and that's always good. And yeah, so we'll bring some more prizes and have a lot of fun. So obviously that movie is going to be on the countdown today for good reason, and we'll get to that. But let's start off at number 5. And when we were compiling this list, I'll be honest, I forgot about this one, and you had to remind me, and it is from 2007, and it's called Stuck.
I'm sorry. It wasn't my fault. You should have watched where you were going. take me to a hospital. You can leave me a few blocks away. I won't tell him anything about you. I can't tell him anything about you.
Why are you doing this to me? I need your help.
I thought you said you hit a guy. You didn't say you hit a guy and brought him home with you.
You said you could get rid of him, right? You said you could do it. You said it would be easy.
His blood is everywhere. You can't get rid of blood.
I don't know you. You don't even know where I am. You can't leave me like this.
This is a weird one. Stuart Gordon directed, right? So, great genre director, Reanimator, the biggest and greatest of the Stuart Gordon movies. He made a ton, though.
And you know what? I can't think of Stuart Gordon anymore without thinking about the time that we met him at Horror Hound, and I think he thought you were pretty. He was giving you the eyeball.
I'm sure that's not true.
I think he was.
But I was excited to meet him. It was very exciting to meet him. Big fan. And I really love what he does with this movie because he's got a weird sense of humor that you can find in any one of his movies. And you can see it here, but it's a very unusual kind of dark comedy. It's not a comedy. There are comedic elements about it. I think what he brought to the surface was just the absurdity of the story. And we'll get to the story, the true story here in a second, but don't dismiss this film because in particular, Mina Suvari and Stephen Ray are so good.
They really are.
They're so fully committed and they find such ways to really express complete characters, very rounded characters, given the parameters of the film.
And here's the thing about, you mentioned the comedic aspects of it, which I think we both recognized the first time we saw it. But if you go back now, I found, and looking at trailers, trying to find a clip, I found a trailer on YouTube that I had not seen before that was done, I'm sure it was done after the fact, and really makes the film seem more like a straight-up comedy than it is. It really is playing up, I think, too much.
Yeah, because it's not a comedy.
It's really not.
No, it's actually very sad.
It is. It's an extremely sad and horrific story, and it has dark, absurdist, comedic elements to it, but I wouldn't never include this in a horror comedy ever, but this one trailer that I found really made me think that that's what they were going for now.
So, it didn't make a lot of money, so if you're not familiar with the story, it's a true story. It's actually based on a case from Fort Worth, Texas in 2001 where a woman named Shantae Millard hit a man as she was driving intoxicated home, and he was stuck in the windshield of her car, and she left him there to die. She just went inside her house and just left him stuck in her windshield until he died, rather than take him someplace and face the music. And so that's the story that this movie tells.
Yeah, which is, think about that. That's unbelievable that someone would do that.
Yeah.
So the movie doesn't follow events to the letter.
No.
It does, but that's the setup. That is the true crime setup. And then they kind of put their own narrative on it, especially with the ending.
Right.
But it's based on that just incredible, I guess, absurd. It's an absurd incident. If it wasn't so sad, it's just straight up absurd. But you're right. The actors, the two main actors,
right,
are so committed.
They are.
And Stephen Ray is he's usually good.
Yeah. You know what? It's Mina Suvari who really impressed me.
Oh yeah.
You know, she plays the woman who's the driver, but she also her character works in like an old folks home.
Yeah.
And it's just she's very capable. She's very compassionate with the patients. You know, you really want to like her.
And she's concerned that she's up for a promotion, and of course she's concerned when this happens that's going to, affect her promotion. And then as she gets consumed with these events, once the man is stuck there in her garage, then she's missing work. She's being late for work. So she's got this crisis going on at work as well, and ends up almost taking a victim mentality because this man had the nerve to get stuck in her windshield and ruin her life.
Yeah. It's just, it's a phenomenal performance because there are times when you do sort of feel sorry for her, which is amazing to think about.
I know.
And Stephen Ray is great. Just this sad sack. I cannot believe this is happening. Are you really not going to help me? He just does a wonderful job.
Yeah, because the movie sets him up. It sets him up before the accident happens as a sad sack. He's not having a good time in his life either.
No.
But yeah, it's amazing the situation. It's amazing that it's true. And they are all invested in it, as you said. And it was just totally overlooked.
It was, yeah. Nobody went to see it. And I think maybe it was, it's hard to describe and think, I want to see that. It's like you think, well, that's a 15-minute short, and a hard one to watch at that. So nobody watched it. And honestly, I think you should. I think you should give it a shot.
Yeah, just from 2007. Yeah, it's called Stuck. And another one that we thought about in this vein, I think, was one called The Girl Next Door. And that's actually from the same year, 2007.
Which is kind of crazy if you think about it. It's though The Girl Next Door was written by Jack Ketchum, who wrote The Woman, one of our very favorites,
that a time
couple
or two,
of times.
yeah.
So, and I mean, he's just got a long career in writing horror, and he wrote the story based on a 1957 crime. A woman just kept a teenage girl hostage in her basement. And not only did the woman abuse this girl, but her sons did, and then eventually all the neighborhood kids did. And then eventually the girl died of her wounds. The Ketchum film it's very well done, and the actress who plays Ruth, the villain, her name is Blanche Baker.
And you might actually know her as the older sister, the sister that was getting married in 16 Candles. If you can believe that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but she's the baddie here.
Yeah, and she's wonderful. She's really, really good. And most of the performances are good. You know, the drawback, there are two. One is that it's got one of those sort of nostalgic 1950s sheens about it, like a Stand By Me kind of a movie. And those, to me, that feels false. It rings quite false. And then the other is just that a lot of times when you watch a true crime film, you have to really ask yourself, why make it? Why make it? And I think the films on this list, there's a reason. There's a reason to watch it. There's a reason to see it. And in this one, you just feel like, why am I watching this happen? So that's kind of the reason why I didn't really make the list. But I don't want to dismiss it out of hand.
Right.
It's a well-written film, certainly, and it's awful. And a lot of the performances are great. I'm not sure I sort of recommend it.
Well, that's just a horrific story, as I guess all these pretty much are,
right.
These true crime lists. And at number 4, one we know well, and you know well, we've talked about it a lot for good reason, from 2005, it is Wolf Creek.
What the bloody hell are you mob doing out here? Scared the shit out of me.
So, what do you actually do?
I can tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. Let's play.
And this is one, too, just as I was glad to talk to Craig in Britain about the British horror, I was really glad to talk with our buddy in
Corey Metcalf. He's another podcaster for Golden Spiral Media, so when you get on there, just tool around, look for his stuff.
Yeah, I was glad to talk to Corey to get his perspective on this movie, because, we've talked so much about it, and he clued us in a little bit about how much of it is true, how much of it is based on, how many different stories. Yeah,
and, we can probably skip the plot summary. I assume that you're familiar with the movie Wolf Creek. Can you believe that movie's 10 years old now?
I really can't.
No, I can't either. But so it's actually sort of a cobbling together of two different murderers. One, Ivan Milat, who kidnapped hitchhikers and then tortured them and killed them in the woods of New South Wales, Australia. And so you can see obviously where that he was really a serial killer. And then there was another one actually happened much closer to the time the film was released, the film that came out, and it was as a man named Bradley John Murdoch, and he was a tow truck driver.
Okay.
It ran a couple off the road, killed the man, and then the woman escaped. So actually they delayed the distribution of Wolf Creek in the northern part of the country because the trial was ongoing, and they didn't want it to sort of taint the jury pool or something like that. So
that's getting close to the movie, with the tow truck driver and everything, and of course, as Mick, the psychotic killer, John Jarrett is just fantastic.
Oh my God, one of the best ever. Really, one of the best ever.
So good, and it's horrific, it's grisly, it's gory, but man, it's effective.
It really is. It's such a great movie. I think part of it is because they get you invested in the characters before it happens, so you're not just waiting for them to be picked off. But I just don't think you can say enough about the performance of John Jarrett. He does such a great job of being amiable and sadistic and insane.
Yeah.
He's just creepy as hell.
Yeah, and there's a couple that we kind of put under this heading as well, and that's the classic Psycho.
Well, actually, because we love the character so much, Mick Taylor, is where I just kind of lumped all of the Ed Gein with him. He's just a psycho who stands out.
Right. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, people always bring up the Ed Gein case. Psycho,
Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs.
They always say that, and then of course there are several movies about Ed Gein himself. I think the most famous one is a Canadian one called Deranged.
Yeah.
and that's really, basically the story of Ed Gein, who none of those. Deranged would be the closest to a true story, although it's not a very good film. The others are very good films, but they are really just barely based on a game. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is simply that he dug up bones and made furniture with bones. That's the only thing. He didn't use chainsaw.
But a lot of people, you'll always hear people point to that case, the Ed Gein case, when you talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, of course, Psycho, because Psycho was loosely based. The original novel was loosely based on his fixation with his mother and how it drove him crazy, and the matricide aspect of it. So so he's got to be mentioned. Although none of those movies really made this list. They would. Several of them, if they were closer to the truth.
Because they're great movies. We're not saying that.
No.
Case. But they're too far removed from the stories. And then there's a couple others.
Yeah, there's some others that I think that you need to talk about. But again, they're so far removed from the actual case that I didn't know that it was. They're just more inspired by true events. One is one we've talked about before that I love called Them, also Ils. It's a French film. Is a great one. The Strangers. I know you love that one.
Yeah, The Strangers.
That's a super creepy one.
That has... we had a few votes for the slow knife scene in The Strangers.
Yeah.
Few people voted for that for our most hard to watch scenes. Yeah, but I do like The Strangers.
And both of those, Them and The Strangers, they're both very similar type of films, and they're both based on cases where children or young people break into your house, really.
Yeah.
And then the classic Fritz Lang M, right, with Peter Lorre. What a great movie that is! One of the greatest ever movies that is, and so super creepy. And it's based on a serial killer, a German serial killer from years ago. So they're all pretty far off from the real truth of it. Like a lot of the movies that did make our list are pretty far off, but not as far as this. They're basically just inspired by particularly sadistic killers. Yeah,
so deserve a little bit of a mention, but that for anybody wondering, that's why. They didn't actually make this list. Weren't quite true crime enough, but certainly Wolf Creek at number 4 is. And that brings us up to number 3. We've talked about this one a couple of times, and it's from 2011, The Snowtown Murders.
Do you mind if I stay over? Of course, mate. You ever shot a gun before? You want to shoot it? Nobody, mate. Did nothing.
This is another Australian film, another one we talked about when we had Corey Metcalf on. And, it's funny because he actually kind of said that this was too hard to watch in Australia.
Wow.
Like it was too soon. It was too fresh. It was too real. And that's the thing. It's very real. It's an alarmingly, disturbingly authentic feeling movie. And but brilliantly made.
Yeah, and not only in the specifics of the actual crime, but I think actually it does a good job in speaking to more universal themes of, authority and, I guess compliance would be a word, as we're going to talk about that coming up. But those types of things, falling under somebody's spell, manipulating other people for your own gains, and that's far and a little bit away from the actual specifics of this case, although they actually do that very well as well. Yeah,
I do think one of the reasons that the film is as good as it is not... the director didn't seem particularly interested in the lurid details of this man's crimes, and they are lurid. What I think he was interested in was, how does this happen? And that's where I think the film really, really succeeds. It really... and you know what it reminded me of, actually, when we were watching recently the Stanford Prison Experiment film.
Yeah. I was just going to bring that up because, and if it's out, it's been out for a couple of weeks. My review is up. Another shameless plug on our website, madwolf.com. The Stanford Prison Experiment. If you're probably aware, a very famous psychological experiment in 1971 that really shed some light on how people can so quickly and thoughtlessly commit depraved acts against other human beings, and how other people then are compelled to follow along. It's amazing, and you're right. This movie touches on that as well. Yeah, it really illustrates it. And, a lot of the credit has to go to Daniel Henshaw, who plays the killer. And if you haven't seen Snowtown, you very likely, you may have seen the Babadook, and he plays that sort of, schlub of a guy who wants to date the mom in the Babadook who shows up at their house. So and the reason I bring that up is because I'd like you to picture his little chubby face and think that's the guy, and that's one of the reasons it works so well. Exactly.
You just totally believe it.
It's like the little chubby face guy in Human Centipede. That dude.
He's not that bad.
I had to bring it up because I just saw a chubby face there, and he's great at how he, slowly gains the trust of the boy.
Oh yeah,
and then starts turning the screws.
Oh, yeah.
So nice, not only well acted but nicely paced, and you're getting sucked in as well.
Oh, you really? It's so unsettling.
Yeah.
It's so unsettling. One of the ones which I think that it has to be mentioned. You can't talk about true crime without mentioning this movie, and I bring it up here because of sort of the it follows a specific murderer, serial killer, and it's the town that dreaded sundown. And the original they remade it just last year. The original is 1976 film, and it's considered one of the very, very first slasher films. And because of that, it's kind of fun to watch because you realize it's not following the pattern that you're expecting it to follow because it actually existed prior to that pattern. So that's kind of fresh and fun. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly low budget, and there are some interesting things that happen. There really are. It's not a bad movie. It feels quaint at this point. And then there's one point which I've mentioned to you before where, the cops are chasing the killer and he crosses the railroad tracks and they have to wait for the train before they can get over there. And it's absolutely clear in like 75 different shots that it's a 3-car train. They just keep reshooting the same 3-car train. And at one point you can see a guy with a boom mic on top of the train with only 3 cars that they have to wait to get past for 15 minutes before they can get to. And then damn, he's gotten away. So it's just hard. It's hard to take it seriously at this point. And you know what? The remake wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. And then it had a very kind of Scream-esque ending, which didn't make any sense at all. So I would say you could skip the remake.
Yeah, but I agree that a lot of people will bring that title up in this kind of conversation. But the Snowtown Murder is definitely one worth checking out.
Oh my God!
If you haven't already, that's at number 3 in our countdown. And number 2, it's the one that we are going to be proud to show for the next edition of Fright Club Live, as we said, and it's from 2012, and it's Compliance.
This is Officer Daniels with the police department. I have a woman here saying one of your employees took money out of her purse. You have a young lady works at the register, about 19 years old, blonde.
Becky, come with me. He's saying he will have to take you to jail.
Or what we could do is have you strip search her right now.
I could strip search you here.
No.
And I think maybe some people might quibble with this as a horror movie, I suppose. But especially when you really look into the details of this case and realize how closely this film follows exactly what happened, it just chills you to the bone.
It really does. It is, because I think one of the things that is powerful about the movie is that you spend the whole time going, no way this could ever possibly happen. And then when you realize exactly this happened in exactly this way, it is terrifying to think what people, regular people, decent people are capable of.
Yeah.
Again, just like the Stanford prison, with just the slightest sort of direction from an authority figure.
Or what they perceive as an authority figure.
They just want to do what they're supposed to do.
If you're not familiar, it's a case where a fast food worker was accused over the phone of committing theft, and slowly and gradually as this went on, the person who was masquerading as a cop and had the manager on the phone and had the manager of the fast food place on the phone kept telling her to have the employee in question do just increasingly lewd and obscene,
just degrading
acts,
things,
just to see how far he could go. And how before they would put a stop to it. And it's just, if you do reading up on this case, it happened. Actually, more than one. It's happened several times, but this movie was based on one specific incident where the guy almost got caught. Mm-hmm. He unfortunately didn't do time, but they really did zero in on somebody. I don't think just could get it proven in a court of law. But anyway, it's when you know that and know how close it comes
to be clear,
reality.
The guy on the phone didn't go to jail. There were people at the restaurant who did.
Yeah, without giving away too much.
No, but just to give you a sense of what he convinced people to do.
Yeah.
And people had asked, there were some, asked the woman in question, who her actual name is Louise Ogborn, why she would go along with all of these things. It's not like they were armed. And she said, just the way it increased and increased and increased incrementally. She honestly thought they were going to kill her.
Yeah, it's astounding, and it's one of those movies. You're so right, because I heard people say it, and when I saw maybe some chat rooms or whatever at the time, where people just said that no way this would really happen. I wouldn't, but it did happen, and that's the chilling thing about it is and then you have to ask yourself, would I act like that? Or, I mean, we all want to think we would stand up and say this isn't right, but would you really?
Yeah.
Because you see these people, and it really happened almost exactly this way, and it's incredible. The acting, the two main characters, the girl that plays the young employee who gets all these unfortunate things happen to her, named Dreama Walker. You might know her if you saw the Clint Eastwood movie Gran Torino. She's the bratty girl at the end who is mad she doesn't get the car.
Yep.
And she's fantastic, only outdone by the woman that plays her manager.
Ann Dowd. Oh, my God. And her name was kicked around that year as an Oscar contender.
As it should have been.
Yeah, it should have been. She was just magnificent.
She
just
is
magnificent.
so good.
And, I think we've mentioned this before, but the writer-director is Craig Zobel, who we've been huge fans of for years for the Homestar Runner website, but in particular from Teen Girl Squad, which is my favorite online cartoon of all time.
Yeah, it's so great. When we found out he was the same guy, just amazing. Very multi-talented. But talk about a director that effectively turns the screws on this.
Yeah.
There are points where you will probably be holding your breath. You can't believe someone is going to put a stop to this, aren't they? It's really the definition, I think, of true crime horror.
Yeah, I think so too.
That this actually happens so closely to the way this movie depicts it. That if you want to read up on it, it's not pleasant, but it can tell you just exactly how authentic this movie is. And again, it's going to be our next edition of Fright Club Live.
And I think one of the reasons that's good is because it really does generate discussion, a lot.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, very much so.
So we're looking forward to talking to you, so come on out and see it.
So come on out. So that's number 2. So the film at number 1 has to be a good one, and boy, it is, from 1986. Another one we've talked about, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
You telling me you never killed anybody before?
I ain't saying that.
Open your eyes, Otis. Look at the world. It's either you or them. You know what I mean.
And you talk about chilling. That might be the definition of just chills you to the bone.
It really does. It really does. And of course, it's based on serial killer Henry Lee Lucas. And also his relationship with another killer named Otis Toole. And in it, it's hard to know exactly what it is Henry Lee Lucas did while he was out, because by the end of his life, he had confessed to more than 3,000 crimes.
Right.
The vast majority of which he was incapable of having committed. So while it's hard to know, so this is clearly not an identical reenactment of anything. The film does a beautiful job with that aspect of Lucas's life in particular, because the whole time, every time he says something, it's probably not true. Every time the character, played brilliantly by Michael Rooker, everything he does, everything he says, everything to shed light on his past, every time you think you're being given a glimpse of why he behaves as he does, none of it's ever true. It's just so you're never on solid footing, and it makes the film just breathless. You just can't stop watching, no matter how grisly it is.
Yeah, and as much as great as Michael Rooker is, and he is, you also have to give it up too for the actor that played Otis, and that's Tom Towles, who
died recently.
Unfortunately, just a few months back, saw that he passed away suddenly, and even more than this movie, he had a long career.
He did, yeah.
So many credits and many films that maybe a lot of people didn't see, TV shows, whatever. But he's also just excellent. The two of them making up that tandem that just can't believe what you're seeing at times. And this one also had at least one scene that got a few votes in our countdown of the hardest to watch scenes.
We don't want to give it away, but it's basically the last scene in the film.
Yeah.
And while it doesn't show anything happening, it just makes your stomach drop.
Yes.
Just drop.
Yeah. More of it is left to what you are pretty sure is happening. Mm-hmm. And that can be even more effective sometimes.
Agreed.
Yeah. And it is just, I just keep going back to the word chilling because that's what it is. It just makes your blood run cold.
Yeah.
That even if, granted, a lot of these things that he said probably weren't true, the things that we do know.
Well, for example, we know that he killed his mother.
Yeah.
And so they refer to that in actually a really super chilling scene, because there's the Otis's sister that you already know there's something wrong with Otis and his sister, and so you feel like, well, is Henry Lee Lucas being gallant? He's trying to say, it's the whole thing just is so sociologically weird. But she asks, she's like, "Did you really kill your mama?" And you just like think to yourself as soon as she says it, like, "Oh God, don't say that." And then where it goes from there is bizarre, is scary. It's the whole thing is just. You just cannot look away. You can't predict what's going to happen next, because you can't imagine that these people really ever existed. But A, they did, and B, the whole cast brings them to life so well.
It really is. It's a case of you cannot look away, even if maybe you want to and think you should. You just can't look away. And there's a couple other titles that fall under this category. You think back before Stardom, Jeremy Renner. In 2002, starred as Jeffrey Dahmer in Dahmer.
Right.
And then there's, of course, the famous Helter Skelter, which was a TV movie of the Charles Manson family. And then one that, I don't think a lot of people saw. We did, because we're such big fans of Michael Shannon, called Iceman. And that was just from 2012, where he played a famous hitman.
Yeah, and it's not a horror film, but it is creepy. It's very dark, and it's just really, really well done.
And he did some horrific things.
He did do some horrific things, and he's so great. We love Michael Shannon, and also actually Chris Evans is really good in it. James Franco is going to win on a rider. I mean, it's just the cast is great. It's really it's a good one.
If you're only used to Chris Evans in his superhero roles, this is totally different.
Yeah, actually, it might take you a minute to realize that's who it is.
It might, but it was a good one. I enjoyed that one from 2012, Iceman. But those all fall under the heading of our number one.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many serial killer movies, and most of them aren't worth watching. Gacy is not worth watching. Most of the Ted Bundy, I mean, they just usually are not really worth watching. And I think that the ones we mentioned there are, even if Helter Skelter is a little dated by this point.
Yeah.
But without question, for me, the best serial killer movie based on true events serial killer you're ever going to see is Henry.
Yeah, so Henry, number one on our top 5 true crime horror films. All right, let us know. Good, bad, do we miss some? We'd love to hear from you. The easiest way on Twitter, we are at MaddWolf, MaddWolf. Also hit us up. We're Mad Wolf Columbus. On our Facebook page, that is always fun. We love to keep the conversation going. And we've got a few things in the pipeline. Well, of course, we talked about Fright Club Live. Once again, come on out. It's August 12th at Gateway in Columbus, Ohio. We're going to screen Compliance. But we've got more things in the pipeline, more ideas for future Fright Clubs.
That's right. We're going to do one coming up pretty soon on Evil Twins. We'll have a co-host, my twin sister, Joy.
Hey, Shanna, I have twin sisters. Can they come on, too?
How many of these movies do you think they've seen?
0. No, but that should be fun.
Yeah, we're going to do Devil, the best Satan movies. We're going to do that coming up. Medical horror, probably a sci-fi horror sort of hybrid, the best of those. So a bunch of stuff coming up.
And we've also gotten some great ideas from you guys, you Fright Clubbers, some ideas to do Slasher Countdown and some others. So you've got ideas. We want to hear them. As always, on Twitter, or just however you want to get in contact with us, please do. And Fright Club just rolls on. Until then,
I'm Hope Madden.
And I'm George Wolf. This is the Fright Club Podcast.
Stay frightful, my friends. No!